Great, welcome everybody. We're very privileged to be here with our special guest keynote speaker, Vitalik Buterin, creator of Ethereum. My name is Jehan Chu, and I'm the founder of Kenetic, which is one of the earliest blockchain and crypto investment firms in Asia, based here in Hong Kong. We're excited to be able to have a fireside chat with Vitalik for the Virtual Fintech Fair presented by StartmeupHK and InvestHK. And we're just going to dive right in. Vitalik, first question, very, very tough question. How are you?
I'm good. Definitely busy with all sorts of Ethereum things the last few months, but otherwise generally happy about things. How are you, Jehan?
Thanks for asking. I'm good. I'm good. I think that people are getting more vaccines, and that's good. The world is getting slightly safer, and at least most places, unfortunately not all, but yeah, I think the world is hopefully trending in the right direction. And I'm excited about crypto and blockchain because I feel like we're heading into this kind of golden age of awareness and adoption. But enough about me. Let's talk about Ethereum. Let's dive right into Ethereum. A lot of people are new to blockchain and crypto. They've been hearing about Bitcoin. They've been getting into it. Everybody's talking about it, and that's leading them to Ethereum. For those who are new to Ethereum, do you mind to just tell the new audiences, what is Ethereum? Why did you create it? And generally, what are the problems you think it solves?
Sure. So I describe Ethereum as a general purpose blockchain. So the way that the Ethereum project started is that I had already been working with Bitcoin and other blockchain projects for some time before then, and I was very excited and interested in the ideas of open source decentralization, the ability to build systems that are guaranteed to follow the rules that you code into them, and all of these things. But Ethereum takes that vision and it essentially expands it, and it says, well, instead of making blockchains that only work for a couple of particular things, so like for example, how Bitcoin is focused on being digital money, and that's the one thing that it does. You make a platform that is decentralized and open in the same way that blockchains are, but you include a programming language, and you can basically build any kind of application inside of it. So it's not just decentralizing one thing, it's opening up this platform where anyone can just basically build their own thing on top of it.
Great. And Ethereum is now about 5 or going on 6 years old, is it?
Well, it depends on from where you count. The Ethereum blockchain is going to have its 6th birthday in July. Ethereum as a project is getting close to 7.5 years old. It's it was building the blockchain before the blockchain existed, obviously, and that did take a while. But yeah, I know it's been around for quite a while now.
I remember our first meetup that we did in mid 2014, when I think there were about maybe 15 or 18 people in Wanchai. It's come a long way. So how is Ethereum doing generally? What are the kind of current milestones and measuring points? What are the current kind of status and statistics of the network, and what are the kind of most impactful features that you're awaiting for in the near future for Ethereum?
Sure. So I think we could talk about the technology and the applications. And I feel like we've had great progress on both of those, right? So as far as technology goes, the big story of last year and this year, and probably next year as well, is this set of upgrades that we used to call Ethereum 2.0, but now we actually call it Ethereum 2.0 a bit less because we want to emphasize that, this isn't throwing out the existing Ethereum platform and making it a totally new one. It's a much more kind of incremental set of changes. But this kind of bundle of upgrades has 2 big parts. One is called a proof of stake. So this is a consensus algorithm. So it's the way that the blockchain agrees on what new transactions people send, in what order. It protects the blockchain against attacks. So right now, Ethereum uses proof of work. And proof of work is the first big way that anyone figured out to make something like a blockchain decentralized, and it was this genius invention, right? But at the same time, there's there's issues with proof of work, like for example, yesterday, Elon Musk, stopped accepting Bitcoin because he was just concerned about the environmental issues. And like proof of stake is is actually a solution to that, among many other things, right? It just requires far less resources to maintain. So that's one side, right? The second side is scalability. So one of the big problems with blockchains is that because of how decentralized they are and because of how they rely on just the large numbers of computers in the network verifying everything, it's difficult to get them to process a huge number of transactions, right? Like if you look at centralized systems, whether Visa, PayPal, WeChat, like any of them, right? Like they can process tens or hundreds of thousands of transactions a second, but they can only do this because they have either one node or a very small number of nodes. Like they're centralized systems. And this does have the advantage of that they're cheaper. But blockchains, they have many thousands of computers participating. And so they have a very hard time getting up to that level, right? So the Ethereum network today, for example, can only process about 20 transactions a second. And we have a series of upgrades. So the big one is called sharding. There's also a technology called rollups that's happening around the same time, and it's probably going to be here even sooner. And each one of those independently increases the scalability by a factor of about like 50 to 100, right? And the two of them stack on top of each other. So once you have rollups and sharding, Ethereum and things on top of Ethereum will actually be able to have the kind of scalability that large scale enterprise applications are expecting. But it's this big journey of actually building out the technology, making sure that it's safe from a theoretical perspective, implementing it, making sure that it's safe from a practical perspective, figuring out the transition from the existing Ethereum system to the newer approaches, and making sure that transition is safe. And there's a lot of people all around the world that are doing hard work on this. So right now there's this online hackathon called Rayonism, where people are trying to just create an implementation of Ethereum moved to proof of stake. And they've been very successful. There's a test net that started running a couple of days ago as well. So lots of these exciting things happening on the technical front. And like the reality is, right, that we need the innovation on the technical front because on the application side, there's just been so much interest, right? So I think 2021 has actually been interesting because I think, especially with the rise of the NFT space, these are non-fungible tokens, like basically kind of individual digital assets that can represent all sorts of things. Like they get used to represent digital artworks, for example, but you can use them for like tickets for events. You can use them for all sorts of things, right? And NFTs are something that's really kind of blossomed in the Ethereum space because, as I mentioned, Ethereum is this general purpose platform, right? Where it's not just about one application, it's about giving anyone the ability to build their own application, and they just have to write a piece of code that encodes the rules of this application, publish this piece of code to the blockchain, and from that point on, anyone can just go and interact with the application. And like, NFTs are one thing that's really taken off, and I've been noticing, Ethereum is actually starting to kind of get widespread attention, and just Ethereum as Ethereum, and not just people talking about Bitcoin and then, oh, by the way, there's a couple of other cryptocurrencies too. So yeah, that's one example. And then there's a lot of other things that people are building in the Ethereum space as well, right? But just, as right now, just the blockchain's ability to handle all of these transactions is it is having a hard time to keep up with the demand, right? Which is exactly why all of these things that we're working on the technology side with scalability and proof of stake are so important.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you brought up the kind of climate aspect and the carbon footprint aspect, because obviously that's a hot topic and a very relevant and important topic. And I guess going back to that aspect for a second, how exactly and to what extent does proof of stake solve the issues that proof of work kind of creates in terms of carbon, and to what scale? And how far off will it be for Ethereum to kind of get to proof of stake and really start reducing its carbon footprint?
The estimates I've seen show that proof of stake can reduce the energy consumption and hardware needs of a network by a factor of like anywhere from 100 to 10,000 or even more, right? Wow. Like the reason why it's so huge, right, is that proof of work just inherently depends on this competitive game where you have these actors called miners, and they're just trying to basically solve as many of these hash computations as possible. And they're trying to do this because there's this really big block reward, this kind of protocol rule in the system that says that if you can solve one of these hash challenges and create a block, then you get a huge reward, right? Like in Bitcoin, it's 6 Bitcoins, and Ethereum, it's 2 Ether. And so there's this huge incentive for everyone to just like keep stacking up hardware and trying to compete for the reward. And proof of stake just works under a fundamentally very different principle, where instead of securing the network by having these actors with a lot of computing power solve hash challenges, you're securing the network by having actors inside of the system that have coins sign messages with those accounts that have coins, right? And so like, because like there is still this kind of economic gatekeeping, right? This idea that, you know, you have to have some amount of coins to participate. And like the reason why you need this is like just in very simple kind of explain like on 5 terms is that like you don't want an attacker to be able to just create a billion a kind of fake nodes and pretends that there are a billion people and so like you want to make it expensive to do that. So proof of work was the first way to do this, and proof of stake is the kind of second and different way. And so like it's basically, it solves the energy issue because like you take away this kind of competitive like kind of solving of hash challenges, and instead all you're left with is just like the work of verifying the chain. So no, I've been extremely excited for a long time, and you know I'm even more excited now that it's so close to becoming reality.
Awesome. Now, I'm glad you talked about NFTs because obviously NFTs have become like synonymous with Ethereum as the birthplace of NFTs. And it's funny, actually, you mentioned NFT ticketing because that's actually our portfolio company, Yellowheart, who's kind of doing that. But DeFi, I think, is also equally, or if not even kind of more active and more kind of prolific in Ethereum. And I think that DeFi itself, or decentralized finance, has had a huge impact and made a huge impression on how we think that the future of finance will unfold. What do you think about DeFi in terms of its kind of placement on Ethereum? How do you think that it changes the kind of the nature of finance for the next 30, 50 years?
I think decentralized finance has definitely already started to quietly provide a lot of value to people. Like it just lets you lets anyone in the world just do a lot of core financial tasks, even if they're not located in a place that has access to kind of existing high quality traditional financial institutions, right? Like the simplest thing is obviously just having cryptocurrency and having the ability to send it. And even that by itself just does a lot of good because, for example, you have like software developers in, Palestine or Africa or whatever other places. And, because of cryptocurrency, they're sometimes able to just get remote jobs working for, US or European or Asian tech companies and actually bring the money home to their families much more easily than they otherwise would. But just being able to send cryptocurrency around is just step one, right? Like one other example of a useful thing that DeFi provides is stablecoins. So with stablecoins, like not only can you send money around, but you basically kind of cancel out the volatility issues with cryptocurrency. And so like if you have to hold on to it for some amount of time, you're guaranteed to kind of get out about the same value and like actual purchasing power that you put in. Then aside from stable coins, like people are also starting to look into, synthetic assets and trying to kind of mirror things other than cash on chain. People are starting to like look at ways to have things like stable coins pay interest rates, and then just all sorts of like other long tail applications, just like prediction markets, for example, even just multi-sig wallets. So just the ability to have an account where you say you give 6 people control of that account and you need 4 of them to cooperate to move the funds. Like that's just like security feature that's just useful for a lot of people, right? Like, so you don't have to like depend on one person to have the entire company's money. So there's just a lot of these gadgets that are being built, and so there's a lot of people that are increasingly like actually making use of all of them, and I'm definitely excited to see the space continuing to evolve.
What are the few kind of specific use cases or specific applications in DeFi that are most surprising to you? The ones that are kind of most exciting for you?
I think the most exciting ones in terms of like being able to provide actual value are in some ways the boring ones, right? So stable coins, immensely valuable. Like I think like there's definitely some cryptocurrency people that try to kind of talk about how their cryptocurrency is better than the US dollar, but that like I think the thing that misses is that there's a lot of people living in countries around the world where the currency that they have access to is much worse than the US dollar. And like hyperinflation isn't something that people get upset about on Twitter. It's like daily reality. And just having a stable coin that tracks the US dollar reasonably well is just such a massive upgrade for those people. So stable coins are one good example. I think like multi-sig wallets, as I mentioned, like are another example. As some of just synthetic assets more generally, so kind of like things that do the same thing as stable coins, except instead of targeting dollars, they could target like stocks, real estate, bonds. I think. Right. I mean, I do think that there's potential to create a kind of much more efficient financial system on top of all of these things, right? Like if you just even zoom in on real estate, for example, like one of the problems with just like real estate as investment is that it's very binary, right? Like you either have a house and you're just insanely over leveraged on one asset, or you don't have a house. And if you don't have a house, then like you're actually negatively exposed to the economic success of the community you live in, which is actually just like horrible from a kind of social and political, like getting the community on the same page perspective. And so, imagine if you could own 0.05 houses, and then you work hard for a few years, and then you go up to having 0.08. You can theoretically do those kinds of things with real estate investment trusts and so forth, but I just feel like one, those aren't accessible everywhere, and two, like the functionality and kind of programmability that crypto and DeFi provides could eventually provide the tools to just do a lot of like much more interesting things in that area.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm glad that you brought up the kind of examples of that, kind of not fractionalization, but the ability to kind of participate, the inclusiveness, I think is a big one. I think the other thing for me that DeFi really is makes me interested in is the ability for kind of DeFi to actually compress time and to be able to turn over value so much quicker. From so many kind of different points that it actually speeds up the economy and creates a lot more value for its participants, and at the same time brings in so many other participants. So that's always been something that's kind of tickled me. Moving out for a second from DeFi, what do you think about the overall ecosystem of Web3 and take some of the other chains that are in the ecosystem aside from Ethereum? How do you feel like they're developing as kind of counterpoints, and how do you see Ethereum positioned 5, 10, 50 years out?
So I think the main kind of thing that a lot of the newer chains are trying to do is they're just trying to say, we're going to target having more scalability in whatever way we can. Like, even if it means, completely sacrificing decentralization and like just going down to a system where you have 15 nodes and like, individual users can't verify the chain anymore, it will just like do that. And in exchange, you have a system that can process, like, say, 300 transactions a second instead of 20. So, like, I definitely can empathize with people's willingness to have that trade-off, because, like, the fact is that demand has definitely risen kind of faster than the technology, and transaction fees are very high for a lot of things. And so if you have an application that, like, just doesn't need that much trustlessness, like, I can see how these things can be attractive. I think in the long term, the challenge for those kinds of platforms, right, is that Ethereum itself is improving, and there's also these layer 2 protocols on top of Ethereum that are rapidly improving. So I talked about rollups. I mentioned that word briefly, right? It's this layer 2 kind of technology that sits on top of a blockchain, and it benefits from the security of a blockchain, but it also has some off-chain logic that essentially sort of splits up the work. So instead of everyone doing verification that's really complex, you have, like, extra proving work that's complex, and then verification is much simpler, right? And there's rollups that are already running. Like, so for example, there's this rollup called Burerin, and it's just been running on Ethereum for over a year. And theoretically, if every Ethereum user moves to Burerin, then, the system could process like 2,000 to 4,000 transactions a second, right?
Wow.
Now, in reality, it doesn't go that high, because Burerin doesn't currently process kind of the full range of functionality that Ethereum offers, but rollups that do provide the full range of functionality that Ethereum offers are coming. And so, like, you basically are going to have these systems that have both high levels of scalability and the higher level of decentralization that Ethereum offers. So, I guess we'll see how that evolves, but, like, I'm personally very optimistic.
Great, optimistic rollups.
Mhm.
So let's kind of back up to startups. This is Start Me Up Hong Kong, and I think the emphasis is on, like, thinking about startups and the startup ecosystem. From your perspective, what are the biggest challenges startups in the Web3 era are facing that their kind of Web2 predecessors didn't have to deal with? What are the kind of challenges or the opportunities of decentralization specifically for startups, and how is their kind of experience different?
Again, I think like, it depends a lot on what exact thing that you're building, right? Because like, just taking the exact thing that you would do if you are not a blockchain startup and just sticking that on a blockchain instead, and just, like, turning that into your startup, like, that's usually not a strategy that works well, right? Like, one of the things with decentralization is that, like, you do have to think more explicitly about, like, what are the trust relationships that you're encoding in the thing that you're building? What are the power relationships that you're encoding in the thing that you're building? Are you building a thing that you intend to be able to survive even if your company disappears, right? Like, if the goal of decentralization is, like, reducing trust in centralized actors, like, you want to build systems that actually have some of those properties in real life. And blockchains are needed to achieve a lot of those goals, but, like, you also have to do a lot of these kind of different kinds of thinking about, like, what is the thing that you're actually building, and how does the thing that you're building work. And the Web2 mode of thinking, like, definitely doesn't just translate over automatically to that, right? And so, yeah, it does end up depending on what the thing you're building is. Like, often, if you're building some kind of marketplace, then often you can build the thing on chain, and you build it and you publish it, and it's just a system of smart contracts that anyone can interact with. Sometimes you'd be building a thing where part of the logic is on chain, and then part of the logic is off chain somehow. Like, sometimes you're building something that's not fully decentralized, but you still want to benefit from the trustlessness properties of a blockchain. So, and it really does depend on the exact thing that you're building, and, like, you do have to think more, and there are more challenges, but where there are more challenges is, like, exactly the place where there's the most opportunities. Like, I think if you build something that makes sense and is successful, like, right now is definitely the time when you have a chance to make a really big difference.
Are there, just briefly, are there any applications that you would like to see founders and developers specifically tackle inside of Ethereum?
I think like within the DeFi space, there's a lot of interesting things to do. Like even just actually building something like within the area of the kind of fractional real estate investing idea that I mentioned. Like that's an idea that anyone can just go and build and like try to make successful. Things around like making it easier to kind of build and run a kind of either decentralized organizations or like hybrid organizations where you take advantage of some of the logic of an organization being on chain, but then you obviously still have people and you still have interactions between people and trying to find ways for those to fit together better. What other things? I think just like applications that use ENS, the Ethereum, just a decentralized domain name system. I think there's a lot of opportunities to start building on top of that. Yeah, I don't know, and I feel like there's a long list right now.
那好，可能现在我们可以讲一点国语因为
好，
所以现在你是你开始以太坊的时候你是19岁是吗？
对。
现在你是27岁
？27。
27。So 你现在知道什么样的事情？你的19岁的 Vitalik 应该知道什么样的事情，什么样的advice。
明白了。我觉得我们以太坊的一个项目的最大的问题，我发现不是技术问题，是人相关的问题。就比如我们一开始做我们的团队的时候，我们有很多 co-founder，我们有我还有8个其他的 co-founder，然后有很多人，我也有很多不我不太认识的人，我不了解的人，然后我们有很多问题，现在有很多的有些以太坊的历史的书，他们描述这些问题比较多，所以。现在，我觉得，以太坊的基金会的情况比较好，但是，我们需要5年才能到这个现在的这个情况。我们5年有比较多的一些内部的团队的有各种冲突。所以如果你要做一个团队，你知道你跟谁合作是比较重要的，就是你。这是一个比较大的，就是一开始我没有特别了解的事情，现在我更了解。还有一个事情就是，是做一个很复杂的事情，又会需要很多时间。就比如我一开始我觉得我们可能会3个月之内做一个区块链，就是我们可以1月份开始4月份做好我们有一个新的链，但是我们发现做以太坊的第一版本需要18个月，所以也需要很多的时间。然后我们也一开始觉得做一个 proof of stake 会需要1年，但是其实需要6年。所以如果你做一个复杂的事情，如果你觉得会也需要一段时间，就其实也大可能会会需要更多的时间。就是 其实这是一个很多人会跟你说的事情，但是如果你自己没有做一个项目，你会觉你你可能会不相信，但是对，其实真的是这样的。
谢谢。A couple last questions, just briefly. What was your thinking about the $1 billion Shiba donation? Can you walk us just through briefly, how you kind of came about it?
So basically what happened was, so first we have Doge, right? And Doge is this, lovely kind of joke cryptocurrency that I've been a big fan of just ever since it was started. And at the beginning, Doge was this fairly small thing. It was just this joke and everyone just mostly laughed and had fun with it. But then in the past year, Doge started really getting a lot of attention and people started getting excited about Doge. And then Elon Musk started talking about Doge. And so just somehow the price of Doge just rose a really huge amount and it went up to a market cap of about $50 billion. So I had some Doge, but I only had a little bit of Doge, and I actually did. I sold half when it was at 7 cents, and I donated that amount to Give Directly, and that was only about $4 million. And at the time, I thought I was so smart, like I just perfectly timed the market, right? Because it got up to 7 cents. And then right after that, it went back down to 4 cents and it hung around 4 cents for a while. But then after that, of course, the price started just really shooting up. And so first there was Doge. And then I think people just kind of got the idea that, well, if the big dog coin is worth $50 billion, then like surely we can make another dog coin and we can make some other dog coins that are worth, at least 5 or 10 or $20 billion. And so I guess that's where, Shiba and Akita and all these others came from. And somehow they had this idea that they would send half the supply to me. And like they would, I guess, like use the fact that I have half the supply as like some kind of marketing thing. Like I don't really understand this well. There was actually someone else that did another version of this. There was this, I think it was a Chainlink competitor. I don't really understand it well. This project called Teller, that what they did was they just randomly gave me about $50,000 worth of their coin. And then they had their Twitter army, like basically just points to my wallet and they say like, hey, look, Vitalik bought some Teller. He's a hodler. He supports this project. He's one of us.
They vampire attacked your wallet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then as soon as I found out about this, I like immediately just sold the Teller on Uniswap and then just gave it to gave the proceeds to some other project. So that ended up not working well. But these dog people, they were clever. They gave the 50% of the supply to my cold wallet. And like the cold wallet is, of course, like, for security reasons, it's very hard to access. And so like I can't just like go and open it up on a whim, right? And so like that's obviously good for my own security, but it also means that like it's like it actually is logistically difficult for me to actually go and take anything out of it. And with COVID, it's even like travel stuff, it's even more logistically difficult. So it took me some time to like figure out how to actually take the funds out of that cold wallet, spin up a new multi-sig wallet so that the other things that I had in there can be safe, and then actually, but basically I just saw like, okay, there's these these new dog coins and they're worth a lot, and there's just an opportunity to like go and turn the the meme bubble into something that could do some good for people, and
turn the meme into something meaningful.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
Meaningful.
Meaningful, exactly. Awesome. Well, we're running out of time, so I'll just kind of speed it up here. There were a couple audience questions from our Twitter, so I'll just ask them in order. What do you think of Handshake?
Again, I don't really kind of honestly understand like Handshake well. Like, I guess decentralized names are good. In Ethereum we have ENS, and that's been great. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's I yes, having more decentralized name projects is a totally fine thing.
Great. And do you like dogs? Not Doge, but do you like dogs?
Dogs are cool. Cats are great too. I like cats.
Me too. All right, last question, and then we'll wrap it up. What is the question that you often ask yourself?
I think recently, like especially with just the kind of rapid rise of like everything crypto this last bubble, like I've definitely been feeling more of this kind of sense of responsibility that, like, you know, this thing that we're building isn't just a game anymore. Like it's actually it's a significant part of the new era. And that's something that, you know, it's not just crypto people saying, like even, you know, respected kind of public intellectuals, you know, economists like Tyler Cohen has recently said a lot of things to that effect. He even had this big article kind of just talking about cryptocurrencies and charter cities as kind of like two big pro-freedom ideas that he's interested in. And so like just realizing that like there is this like yeah, it's not a game. It is this big part of the new world, and so like there is an opportunity and therefore a responsibility to kind of take this opportunity and actually use it to turn into something that provides a lot of positive value for people, and doesn't just turn into a missed opportunity. And like just the question that I ask is like basically, you know, how do we do that? Like, you know, how can we, what things can we do to how actually work together and make sure that crypto actually can be something that you know, really does all that it can to improve people's lives.
Yeah, well, it's a great question and a great answer to that question to ask oneself. So I think that's it for now. Vitalik, as always, we really appreciate. So grateful for your time and your wisdom, and also really grateful for you donating $1 billion to fight COVID in India, and to make the meme meaningful. Thanks again for the Virtual Fintech Fair presented by StartmeupHK and InvestHK for presenting this. And Vitalik, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jehan.